We are very happy to welcome him together. Here you have him, Fredrik Wikholm. Yay, there you are.
All right. Tack. I would love a clicker.
Oh, we
Whilst you fix that.
missed that little part.
Speaking of making it
cool.
too difficult for myself, I was meant to come through here, and I chose to make it easy for myself and come through there. So sorry, Anna, for that.
That's fine.
Thank you. That's my fantastic colleague, Charlotte. She was on the sign, but she's due to create new life very soon, so I'll hold the fort for the both of us. Yes. I am co-founder at Planethon. Planethon lives by the idea that somehow within 2 generations we're able to live in a planet-positive way of life. That simply means build good stuff that solves real problems and beyond cause no harm, reinforce and strengthen your surroundings. That obviously demands whole new ways of doing things, whole new ways of looking at things, whole new ways of speaking, and whole new ways of believing. The good thing, and that's what we will be looking at today, is that there's quite a lot of good seeds out there. Some of them have even sprouted and start turning the tide of capitalism, if you want to call it that. I'm a firm believer in this, that it can be done. I'm not here to convince anybody. That's just how I'm coded. That sits in my body. That's how I go to work. Anybody who wants to join, welcome. If not, cool. To get there, I believe that we need to start in language. Someone much wiser than I told me the other day, I don't think my own thoughts, I think the thoughts of my culture. And if such is the case, what informs our culture is our language. That's what we share with one another. That's how we expand or minimize one another. And when we approach something as complex as systemic change, albeit that it starts in an action, we need good framings for language. So that's where we're going to start today, and then we're going to jump into a few other frameworks. So, first step in language for change is language of critique. We need to know what we're actually critiquing. We need to know what we're actually talking about to make a fair assessment of what should not be any longer. It's a fundamental aspect in moving forward, is to actually lay bare what is wrong now. And there's too much guesswork. I'll come back to these because I'm trying to tell a story within those 3 levels of language today. Language of informed hope. Hope for the sake of hope in and of itself is quite pointless, not in life, but when we're doing change work and when we're looking at large-scale transformation. So, language of informed hope. Why are we hopeful? What's out there? Thirdly, language of opportunity. This is the antithesis of reductive thinking, is when we put our growth hats on and build. What's out there that is an opportunity to us? In this order, we can start to create new language that expands the culture of belief, therefore hopefully also the culture of action. Starting in language of critique. Our return on investment is tipping over, again, stolen it from someone smarter, to a risk of ignorance. It's quite fundamental to me that what we first need to critique is the idea that humans and the planet that we inhabit stands in service of economic growth that gets more and more conglomerated within a few owners of everything. Because at the end of the day, those billionaires are not going to get saved with the piles of billions. So fundamentally, the first critique is that we do not have an economy that stands in service of human and planetary thriving. Well, first survival and then thriving. So fundamentally rethinking economic models, such as what does it actually mean to speak of ROI? What can actually fit in that? Secondly, BMP, or the idea of looking systemically on countries from that perspective. I can only equal it to amassing weight by eating more sugar and fat, and then making an assessment of a human body being off, being well, based on its growth. That's not how living systems thrive. We know that. It doesn't matter if it's one single human or 7.3 billion humans, or soon 10 billion humans, and most certainly all the other living organisms here. So that's the first point of departure of critique. Second, this goes to change work as it pertains to sustainability and social inclusion, but especially the complexity of our Earth and what we actually know about our Earth. There's some really brave souls out there doing the long work of actually figuring out how our planet works. But for as long as we keep on not knowing, keeping it an abstract threat, and something that we somehow need to measure our way into the future in large corporations, we can stand in the status quo of being hopeful or of being scared or saying things about sustainability work in really large corporations. But for as long as these three, Larry, Jeff, Mr. Persson, BlackRock, Amazon, and H&M keep on finding it hard to figure out how to get forward in a sustainable way and work with sustainable innovation, we're not going to get there. It's a very comfortable place. But to actually get deep and understand what we need to do needs to happen now. And that's the second level of critique that I want us to put forth. Because at the end of the day, we can speak how much we want about shorter showers, shame of flying, or eating veggie mince, which is all great, but the reality is this. In little Sweden, H&M, Electrolux, and Ericsson represents more exhaust than the rest of Sweden combined. A handful, big hand, but still a handful of companies represent 71% of all global emissions. This is what we know today. They might be debunked tomorrow, but this is what we do know today. And it's very, very hard for us to sit and demand and expect great sustainable solutions that we've never seen. And it's very easy for these companies to sit and say, we need customer demand. This is the lever for sustainable futures. This is a great, great opportunity, speaking of opportunity in a while. And the third, my suggestion is that we actually destroy sustainability departments in large-scale corporations. Not the humans. They're fantastic. But we need to spread them out in innovation teams and look at it from another place. Reductive mindsets of lowering emissions or planning our way forward in a sustainable way won't get us there. We can't back into the future. And one of the reasons that we end up in shame in and between each other so much, apart from living in some sort of Lutheran society still, is the fact that there's so many poor options that we have to figure out our own options, which all too often is about doing less of something and then shaming each other for not doing less enough. So we need to move ourselves from a shaming and reductive mindset and perspective on one another and step up and step through. Start thinking growth, start thinking organization, and pushing those who are the levers of a sustainable future. Language of informed hope. Why should we be hopeful? This is the sweet spot for Charlotte, I, and the many others that run Planethon. Our job overall is to make sure that those things that are signs of hope get scaled and gets replicated and gets deepened. We do it together with some of the best scientists I've ever met, and we do it with brave companies, brave new companies, and so on and so forth. But the point here is that we translate the knowing of our planet into actions to build better companies. That's part of it, and that's what we're going to talk about now. First and foremost, to me, science is a treasure map, right? Understanding what's going on here, and we're not going to deep dive in this model now because it's going to be up to all you to go deeper when you go home. But understanding the models of what's needed now, the social floor, the ecological planetary boundaries, they have a huge subcategory of problems that can be clearly defined and then solved, that then informs our joint agreements, our to-do lists, the global goals. It's a treasure map. It's not fear-mongering, it's a treasure map. How is it a treasure map? Well, firstly, it is by surfacing what's good out there. The Champions project is a research project conducted between Planethon and researchers at Stockholm Resilience Center. It's surfacing those initiatives that somehow are anchored in scientific insights about our planet with a clear foundational starting point of becoming a company that's scalable in the very first place, on the ideology of solving a very critical, or hopefully many critical interconnected problems, not generating more problems, but reinforcing surroundings. This is complicated, and it's fine, because we're very early, but I can tell you a few very important things we've noticed out of this. What we're doing is mapping the yellow points, our planetary boundaries, our issues, our challenges with our planet. The purple little dots here are social boundaries, all of which has informed the global goals. The brown points, the many organizations, this is just a small outtake from the world of researching all these companies. The many organizations that actively work towards solving urgent problems. The green dots, what are the new technologies they're using? And blue, the domain space that are growing, new markets, new segments of business, where we make value of solving things. Clicking in and going a bit deeper, double-clicking to opportunity here. If we focus on, I understand you don't see this, but it says climate change in the middle. And these are all then companies, technologies, and domains working around it. We're mapping the world, and it's a great world out there. It is a great counterculture to threat and death. It's life and thriving. And it's new ways of utilizing the economic system for human and planetary growth. So, I'm going to tell you a little case study from this. One of the big insights is that, for the most part, the stuff that makes our planet heat up, the complex reality behind global warming, is very often down to the fact that we have nutrition in the wrong place. Right? We have large-scale cycles where nutrition should be in the right place, but it isn't, because we have linear systems in a circular world. So, for example here then, landfills or agricultural sectors, meat industry and so on, produces enormous amounts of methane emissions. Methane is a fantastic building block if you know what to do with it. But if you release it into the atmosphere, we kind of become screwed after a while because it reinforces the greenhouse gas effect. But, within that little dot system we just saw, we have new light technologies. They're one of many. They've started capturing greenhouse gases, them specifically methane, and turning it into carbon negative plastics, recyclable, recompostable, outcompeting fossil fuel-based plastics, both on price, scalability, impact. They've learned how to harvest methane before it hits the atmosphere and make something good of it, and outcompeting the capitalistic way of making plastic products today on their own home turf. They're just better. What happens in the ecosystem? A big giant and a small giant story. IKEA, license producing, building factories on behalf of New Light to scale methane to plastics use in their systems. Of course, they need to do a lot of other things, but one of the many steps is that they're turning their plastics that they're selling in forms of chairs and tables and so on, away from fossils into greenhouse gas based. It opens a belief system and a pathway for action. I ask you now to bear with me and imagine a little bit, because I forgot my props at home. Believe for a second that the jacket that I am wearing is made from methane emissions. And play with the idea of wearing the change. Because from air, the other company I'm willing to die for is a research and development company where we, together with scientists in Borås and in California, have produced the first ever textile fiber made from methane emissions. We have a long journey ahead of us, but the journey is clear. That in and of itself will open the pathway for someone else, and someone else, because it's living ecosystems of people who believe when they see. Backtracking very simply. Climate change, threat, difficult, scary. Global warming is the reason we release too much exhaust into the atmosphere. Okay, double click to clarity. Nutrition in the wrong place. Nutrition can be used. Nutrition has many forms. It can be used in building stuff. That's how we start working our way down through the complex weave of too much information and becoming clear of what we can do next. Ecovative. I'm going to do a few case studies just to look at the different pathways in this dotted system you saw before. Ecovative design, maybe you heard of them. This is coated mycelium turned to building blocks. The root system, the brilliant root system of fungi at scale. Using it together with wood chips to build new ways of building materials instead of concrete and all sorts of unsustainable practices. Listening to Mother Earth for her brilliance in technology, utilizing it in a field called biomimicry, applying tech, coding by listening to Earth, and you start seeing new ways of doing things. They obviously infiltrate the old ones because they supply not only cool or innovative, but price-worthy, awesome stuff that makes meaning not only for those who work there, but those who get to purchase this at large scale into other companies. That then opens a pathway of belief, a new language of speaking of things. Did you know that you can code mycelium so that we can make building blocks for our future? Our dear pioneers on home turf, I just want to speak to that because we're going to come to an important insight here. Oatly, this oat-based company in Sweden that are having good ripple effects and scale effects out in the world right now, they did something really, really important here. Apart from starting from a scientific base of like, how do we build something that is nutritious, that we can drink, that will outcompete milk? Okay, scientists get to work, then innovators get to work, then people who have scalable knowledge get to work, company. But what they also did was they have started to challenge a whole system of angry dairy industry stakeholders. And even when they wanted to take them down in the most fundamentally clear way they thought they could, suing the bejeebus out of them, 11 processes of being sued, lost 7, many of them for using this campaign. It's like milk, but made for humans. What they did was that they simply took that and just shared it with the people of the world and made an enormous leap of communicative progress. In Sweden, they said, dålig stämning i frysdiskarna. They really, really capitalized on the fact that the Big Brother were trying to take them down. And that started to nudge the system in a way that the system had never been nudged before. Whether it's relevant or not in the long run, but Arla then started to develop some sort of oat competitor, and so on and so forth. The bottom line is that innovation can come at many different scales, and that's what we're going to talk about very soon. Third, fourth example, Kiverdi. Lisa Dyson, I had the honor of interviewing her for a book. She took, speaking of ecosystem, she took a technology built by NASA to create life in little space capsules by recycling carbon dioxide. brought it down to space, started scaling it. Today, Kiverdi delivers solutions for capturing and recycling carbon dioxide and turning it into edible oils and edible flour. Flour, you bake bread. Bread, good. Lisa knew how to tap into something for the greater and for the bigger than what it was intended for intentionally, as it pertains to a few astronauts versus the world. This comes to two very specific frameworks that they speak about a lot at Stockholm Resilience Center in their stream transformations. And I think it stands out in our research as well. Two simple perspectives of entrepreneurship. And when it says entrepreneurship, folks, this goes for leadership, this goes for civic engagement, this goes for working with policy, this goes everywhere. It's not for a chosen few in an impact hub somewhere. It's for all of us. Social entrepreneurs, those who very often maybe introduce the innovation. Start it somewhere, gets fire. Institutional entrepreneurs are those who often, like Oatly did, now working a lot with legal innovation, that nudges the larger institutions. They might be having friends on the inside, they work with policy, good relationships, because ecosystems are relationships. Moral entrepreneurs are those who changes our mindsets, who build new belief systems by their sheer actions. All of these actors are very important. Another aspect of scale, because there's so much talk about scaling. Scaling out, scaling up, scaling deep. Scaling out, replicating what you already have. More hospitals that look the same as the previous hospital, or whatever it might be. Roll out on new markets. Having something that works, that is great, that you roll out and make more of. Scaling up, daring to go against new complexities. Working with the legal system, working with local bureaucracy, innovation changes. It's more complex. You don't just need to roll out your innovation and say it's going to be fine. You need to innovate in new ways. You need to adapt. You need to have smarter people in the room that know something else than your core business and so on. Scaling up. Scaling deep, going back to moral. Changing culture and beliefs. Scaling deep. My first company that I stumbled my way through, Uniforms for the Dedicated, still around. We worked a lot with sustainable development in the clothing industry. And as someone, it was probably the most beautiful compliment I've ever heard. A friend in the fashion industry, she said, most of many things that are good and established in sustainability practices in Sweden and fashion today has first been tried and tested by Uniforms for the Dedicated. We were quite good at scaling deep, still sucking at scaling out. Step by step, you know, you can't be great at everything. This leads us to, we live in an interconnected world with interconnected, complex problems, yet clear, but interconnected. Therefore, we need to think as an ecosystem. It's known as systems entrepreneurship. It means people that are different than I are those that I need. Those that are moving the needle in the system in a different way. I need to see them, I need to scan them, I need to interact with them. I can't just be with more replicas of self. That is the simple essence of systems entrepreneurship, and it's critical now when we're about to establish a new system. Knock, knock on wood. Language then of opportunity, where are we today? We are in a world where new people build new companies, institutions, ventures, non-for-profits, simple innovations, whatever it might be, that we all can invest in, purchase to our larger corporations, support with communication. We live in a social media landscape. The sharing stories moves fast. i.e., there's a new world coming where we make business by turning the world greater. And I'm not saying that in a Silicon Valley type slogan. I actually do mean it. There's a lot of people that work from a scientific knowledge now having very successful regenerative processes. These are the ones to support. Be brave. Find them. Invest in them. Eat them. Wear them. Drive them. App share them. If you're a buyer in large companies, start looking for new ways of buying the materials that you need. Believe bigger, bring it back into wherever your workplace is, and share. Because again, language is what brings us forward. When we start communicating new things, we start believing new things, and these new things are real. So, for me, this is my guiding principle of how we build corporations or little ventures. This is my language of opportunity. This is how I would like to see the world going forward when we have an economic system, if we're going to have one. We exist because we're in service of the world. We do it by knowing what the heck we're going to solve. The truth is out there, many things to solve. Let's not be unclear about that. We create valuable solutions, as anybody else, working. We make money, and that money, if we're going to make them, we invest in others. We spread. There's no point in having big piles of money. That's just, excuse the pun here, but that's just oil in the system. Money is just possibility. And it's important to put that possibility on people around us to do greater, braver things all the time. Because at the end of the day, I want these three to feel the fire. And the fire can't come from Greta. The fire must come from the fact that we make change from the inside out and the outside in. Everybody. And we do it by utilizing the 6 to 10 to maybe 12 hours that you spend in the office. You get clear. What do we need to solve? Who are solving it? How can we partner? What can we put in here? Again, what can I critique? What hope is there? And what opportunity do we have instead? Because these folks need to be in service of this crew. That's the world. In Sweden, the name for the business sector, all actors on the market, is called näringsliv. Translated to nurture life. It's the whole point of having an economic system in the first place. We just got a bit lost. But life is long, many generations. That's what we're doing. And we do it by being planet positive. Thank you.
Ooh, I'm here. Don't sneak away.
Okay.
Get back there. Thank you. Wow, that was awesome. That was an awesome talk. Would you say that there is, though, a trend of very many companies, such as you talked about, like social companies, that is actually starting from that bottom of that pyramid, coming up now? And why are they coming in at this specific moment in time?
I think that we should not underestimate the generational maturity, the generational wisdom, and the generational insights about our world. In a sort of very Insta-friendly world that we live in now, it is seemingly so that everything is the current snapshot. But we, including the companies that we build, are mere, puzzle pieces of past generations, future generations to come. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because we have probably needed to do everything that we have done up until now to have the insights and the epiphanies that said, whoa, wrong path. What's another path? So I think that is one element of it. We just so often just look in the now instead of like, okay, what did the people before us do and what have we learned from that? Is that why we are where we are now? We're also simply becoming greater at, with technology and insight, being able to learn about our world in another way. We have seen the factual evidence of things not going as we planned and hoped for with the previous iteration of our economy, with anything from fires to drought to coral reefs dying. And we see quite quickly the social impacts, right? We see the social unrest, we see nationalism, we see tribalism, in a bad way. We see
that's spurring the change itself.
Of course. I mean, when we're fundamentally threatened, we need to do something.
That's when we take action.
So, I think we just also know better. I think that my experience working a lot with Stockholm Resilience Center is that fundamentally more people actually listen to them. And they maybe have become better together with their global community of communicating in another way. And you know, I think society keeps on hitting pivotal trends. We're just very obsessed with our own. Have been pivotal trends in the past and like turning points, and you know, so I think it's part of that. And I think my experience also, having lived away from Sweden for quite a long time and living in communities of people who are just first very nerdy about getting things right. There's a whole bunch of people that actually want to dig deep into the problem and say, all right, from here I can build something, as opposed to looking just at the technology and saying, wow, I like that technology, how can we put it to use? It's a different starting point in the triangle.
Let's do more questions in just a little bit, but we have one more speaker before our Q&A session starts. So for now, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
another round of applause.